My name is Derek Mathews. I'm from the County Executive's Office. So on behalf of Steve Shue, welcome to one of the Ambassador Coffees. I just want to kind of set out why we're here, what we do, and then I'm going to acknowledge some folks in the room. Back in September, we started this Anne Arundel United campaign. The campaign was constructed from the thought process of there was a lot going on in the county. There was a lot of discussions about hard conversations, some surrounding race, some surrounding people's gender. Come on up, Pastor. And folks just needed a better understanding of inclusion and diversity. And so I was hired almost 2 years ago. We've now got a compliance officer, Alana Dennis, who may pop in a little bit. She's got a heavy workload today. So as Steve Shue was trying to process how we could do better than what we were doing, you have 2 new positions in the county, kind of focusing around trying to get more inclusion across the county. That sounds like it makes sense. That sounds like a good move, right? This is a little interactive. Does that sound like? Okay. Yes. All right. So the coffees came about back in 2004 when I left Prince George's County as an officer. 4 years later, I started this concept in the county, and here's what the thought process is. We all know when there's a problem because we tend to react. Something happens, we react. Something's found at Crofton at a middle school, we react to it. Well, we're trying to get to a more responsive mode. When you have laid the foundation down for something and can plan for things, you can respond to something. Like in a good marriage, when you and your wife or significant other have an issue, when you react to something somebody says, it's usually an argument, right? But when you properly respond to it, you can usually work it out and kind of move on. Same concept here. These coffees were designed, we do this every month, so we are not here today because of what happened at Chesapeake. We are here today because geographically, and the stars aligned, it just so happened that this one was planned, right, geographically in close proximity to Chesapeake High School. So when we had the school shootings a couple of weeks ago, down in Deal, Mike, were you at Deal? I wasn't there because I had back surgery. I shifted the focus because I wanted it to be about school safety. So we had St. Mary's shooting, we had something happen in Florida. Well, what better topic to discuss than active shooter in the school and what you could do? So today, I'm going to keep the focus alive because we're going to talk about race, a very difficult subject. It is sometimes, it makes people very uncomfortable to say black, white, race, the whole thing. It makes people uncomfortable. So we're trying to get people out of their comfort zones. And what I want to do is I don't want to talk about what happened, right? I want to talk about what we're going to do. I want to talk about what everybody in this room has a significant role in what we do next. Can we agree on that? Mm-hmm. Something has already happened. There's no need to continuously talk about why it didn't go this way or why it did, who point the finger, and we're not doing that. That's not what we do. I want to walk out of here with some sense of, wow, I understand something slightly different than I did when I walked in. And I want you to go tell somebody. And we need to start the conversation going and be comfortable being uncomfortable. Does that make sense? And in order to move forward sometimes, you have to be uncomfortable. I've got to get people out of their comfort zone, right? Because as you're standing here looking at me right now and you say, well, I don't see any issues where I am, and I don't see, Mr. Mathews, I only see gray. I don't see color. Okay, that sounds good, but you do. You see a 6'4" black guy, needs to lose some weight, whose back is all jacked up, whatever. That's what you see, right? But you have no idea that that guy went to Key School, that guy went to Broadneck, that guy's son, significant others don't look like the rest of the family. But you don't understand that until you get to know me, right? So I know your name, and you know my name, but you don't really know me. And in order to do that, we've got to get comfortable knowing each other. And that's what the intent of today is. So, having said that, I'm going to have a conversation with some folks from the community today. But before I do that, I also want to explain the coffees are representative of agencies across the county, resources across the county, and then also civilians who have opted to go through a specialized piece of training with the Department of Justice and myself to learn how to go out in the community and have hard discussions. So I'm just gonna scroll through the room real quick. Fire, raise your hand, Lieutenant Kornmeyer from the fire department. He's recruiting and doing outreach from the fire department. Tawan, raise your hand. He's with the partnership of, he works with Pam Brown, Partnership of Youth and Family and Children's Services. I've got Board of Education, Stacy. My Human Relations Commission, Mike.
Hi, everybody.
Department of Aging and Disabilities. Where's Brandy? There's two of them. Brandy's right. All three. Department of Aging and Disabilities. Nancy Schramm is Constituent Services. Anybody heard of Not My Child? Mm-hmm. The opioid. That's the driver. She holds the wheel for that. I've got Department of Housing in the back. And who am I? I got the crowd. Okay, then I've got Anthony Alston here from Department of, from the school board. It's tough when you're trying to look at faces. And you told me your name.
Okay, Heidi Oliver Ogilvy.
Okay, and
Also
she's okay. And then,
And you have Annie King,
okay,
Department of Health.
Okay, Department of Health. And then without further, if I didn't miss anybody, then I've got one of my ambassadors in the back too. Raise your hand, brother. You want to say anything about being?
I want to listen.
You want to listen? Okay. Who am I? Who you
All
pointing
of the
at?
elementary principals.
Elementary principals?
From the
Okay. See, I didn't know that. Raise your hand. Be proud. Give the principals a hand. And then I've got to, so the partnerships that we have, we've got the college, we've got Community Action Agency, I've got all the departments, the library. Everybody from the library, raise your hand. The library folks, please give them. So the concept started in coffee shops. We quickly outgrew coffee shops were happy to have me. And then they got annoyed because it was like you're showing up with all of these people and there's nowhere to sit. People can't get in line. So the library said, we got it. You have all the venues you want across the county. So it made sense because they have rooms, right? So that was a perfect partnership. So thank you, library, we appreciate it. And they are now paying for the coffee and donuts. So, that's a good thing. All right, so listen, so I wanted you guys to have a chance to write some questions down when you came in. Somehow we missed that. So I'm gonna pass some cards around, and as we begin the conversation, if you think you have a question, you can ask on behalf of someone, or it can be your question. I'll try to quickly gather the cards, and
You forgot members of the community.
okay, I got you.
Okay.
And I would like to pass them around and just put a question on there that you would like us to, in case we don't hit it. So would you pass those around for me, LT? Just pass them back. And here's some pencils. And then again, I'll do it now. So members of the community, raise your hand. If you're just a member of the community and you're here today out of concern, a parent, give yourself. So, okay, so it is 9:15. I'm usually pretty good with time. I've seen these things. At 10 o'clock is usually my cutoff because sometimes the rooms have people behind me. So, so here's what we're gonna do. So, I have Reverend Jay Offer here. He has been integral in the community with helping to positively work through the community as we have dealt with several issues across the county. So he's sitting to my left. Then I have Maisha Gillings, who is the equity liaison for the county. Her job has become, she's probably the second busiest person in the county. Of course, I'm saying I'm first, right? I'm just joking. So her and I work very closely together because as the phone rings with concerns and us trying to process how to get Anne Arundel United activities more intertwined with the school system, this is my counterpart. And then I have the principal of Chesapeake, who has been, he's been a busy guy. He's had a lot on his plate, aside from being a principal. This is a tough job anyway. And then when you have issues come into your facility that most of which you have no direct control over how those things manifest themselves. So I think he's done an outstanding job. Can we give you a round of applause? got the school resource officer, the good corporal, who actually sees the kids every day from a security standpoint, but he has become the face of peace. The police have always got to remain the friend. I mean, we need them to have that sense of feeling that if something's not right, they are the mom, the dad, the everything, and just so happens they have a gun in case things go south. So we give big props to the police department. The supervisor, Lieutenant Johnson, is here, so it's always good to have the chain of command here, the command staff. So, Lieutenant, we appreciate you being here as well. All right, so I'm going to dive right into this. So here's how I want to do this. So, Reverend Offer, we have had over the last couple of weeks a host of things happen within Chesapeake High School and across the county, because it's not just Chesapeake. I was down at Southern the other morning. Things have happened. Last year we had things going on in Arundel. This is a systemic problem that we're seeing in the community, and it's working its way and weaving its ways into the school, right? You and I have had a lot of discussions. I've been watching what you're doing. Just talk to me or talk to them for a second and tell us from your perspective and where you sit what your organizations, your body of clergy has been doing in the community to try to mitigate some of the things in the community. Can you share?
First of all, you might wonder how the clergy got involved in the situation. The reason that we got involved is because members of the community reached out to members of the clergy. At first to advocate on behalf of some of the students that were involved from the victim standpoint. And then when we were trying to unpack this and see what we could do, the first thing that we wanted to do was be reflective of bringing a calming presence to a situation where a lot of people were upset. And Bishop Larry Lee Thomas from Empowering Believers has always been kind of a leader amongst the African American clergy in the county, and as well as the county as a whole. And he brought us together, and we came up with a ministry of presence. And some of you may have seen what that looks like. When it first started, we just showed up at the school and we would stand on the apron of the school, and as the students came in, we would wave to them and say, "Good morning, how are you doing?" And some people didn't know what to make of it. They didn't know what we were getting ready to do. I don't know what kind of mischief you would think that people wearing collars could get involved in. But
I'm a preacher's kid now.
And Bishop Thomas encourages us to wear our collars so that we're easily identified. So we did that for a few weeks, and we were received by the administration. Mr. Alston knew what we were up to and we were doing, and there were some logistical things that made it difficult to do that as the Ministry of Presence grew. But throughout the entire process, besides the Ministry of Presence, we wanted to connect with the community. The issue that we found was that the community didn't feel as though they were being heard, and so we facilitated that. We sat down and talked to the community, and they shared their concerns. They shared what their thoughts were. There was a press conference jointly done by the NAACP and the clergy. We had a town hall meeting. A lot of people were upset because they felt like they didn't get a chance to be heard, and they didn't get the answers from the school board that they really wanted. But we limited them to 3 minutes. And labeling government appointees to 3 minutes is not.
Watch it, Reverend.
Well, I had to do that for preachers too.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't an environment where we expected to get resolution to the issues. We wanted the community to be heard, and so we've tried to be a facilitator to those conversations. And the process is ongoing. It's very early. And then we were blessed to run into a group of insanely enthusiastic moms and two of them are here, Jennifer and Dawn. You didn't think I'd call you out.
Is this the balloons? And
They are the balloons.
Okay.
They are the
Guys, give them a
chalk
round of applause.
And so aside from standing out in insanely cold temperatures for getting mitts and everything and waving to kids, we stood out on the side of
Thank you for
Mountain
calling that out. I
Road.
appreciate it.
We waved to people in the community too. So it's gotten bigger.
So two questions for you before I move down the line. So is what you're saying, was this in response to or in a reaction to what had happened at Chesapeake, or was this going on before these activities have taken place?
Well, based on your definition of a response, this was a response.
Okay.
The part that we had to react to was trying to unpack the allegations and be advocates, and that
Okay.
process goes on as well.
Sure.
But it was more of a response because clergy, we're used to dealing with crisis situations in the community. We're used to bringing people in and having conversations, and we're the ones that people get frustrated with because I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to listen to you. And I'm going to find out somewhere in there where the common ground is and where the real work needs to be accomplished and who needs to accomplish that work.
But the school is also used to dealing with crisis. So somewhere there's a delta in there. We're going to get to the bottom of that, right? So the second piece I have for you, the last question, is you mentioned the clergy and then you said NAACP. So Reverend Tillett and the NAACP, is there two separate missions here when you say that, or are we talking about two separate?
I think there are two different organizations that make up the coalition that we have, and it's more than that now because we have the NAACP, we have the clergy, we have the community, we have organized parent organizations that we're partnering with. But the clergy has its goals of how we will address it. But the NAACP, inherently by the nature of the organization, has a more focused policy, changing, driven, negotiating focus.
Okay.
And so sometimes people, and actually I think it's kind of unfair, they get confused as to the roles that Reverend Tillett plays. Reverend Tillett is a member of the clergy, but he's also the president of the NAACP. Correct. So he has to walk a line, but in the end, he has a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility to the NAACP.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it. So, Maisha, let me. I am fully aware of some things that you're doing. One, because my wife is now part of the team, but the equity liaisons in every school, that falls under you. I think folks should hear what the equity liaison and the equity, that whole piece means. What does it mean? What's it doing? What's the purpose? The activities? Can you talk about that?
Sorry, so I'm going to take you on a journey.
Okay, take me on one.
If that's
Take me
okay.
on
Everyone, I'm going to take everyone on a journey. So when I used to be a principal in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, I was a principal at Brooklyn Park Middle School and Severn River Middle School. So during my tenure as a principal, we talked about what we call Room 203. What are the characteristics of those really highly effective teachers? Those teachers who can really reach the hard to reach. I mean, we have, children who come to us that our traditional method of doing things just may not work for all students. And so at that time, we were really highlighting those classroom teachers who really move mountains with, again, those hard to reach students. And some of the characteristics that were identified at that time would be those teachers who really got to know students and not just seeing what they see in front of them, but really knowing that student's story and meeting them where they are. These were teachers who knew good pedagogy, how to deliver effective instruction, not just having that one bag or trick, but have multiple tools to really reach students. Really knowing how to have outreach with families. And so it's one thing to highlight those individual teachers, then the goal was, okay, we need to have whole schools, right? To have a whole school of teachers in a building. So then the focus and the professional development and the training went to, okay, we know what an effective teacher looks like. Now let's go ahead and make sure we have support to grow all teachers. Then we moved to district. Now I'm looking at Mr. Austin here because I'm coming behind Mr. Austin.
Okay.
So he started this work that I'm speaking about. And so when I came aboard, it was all about now district. We're talking bus drivers. So my team literally, they provide training for transportation. They've been to CAFRA, nutrition, food and nutrition, that department, secretaries. Because when families come into the building, who's the first person you see? And it's all about how we treat one another, right? And not making judgment on who's walking through that door. So that training comes through my office. So each school, they're assigned what we call an equity liaison. I only have an office of 4 people, so it's really important to have people in each school to do the work, to make sure that the training is happening at the schoolhouse. So our training really starts with exactly what Derek said, which I can appreciate, is what I call the term cultural bubble. Each of us today, we arrive here with some kind of influences. The influences for me to make who I am and how I see the world is going to be very different than you, and then all of us. And so in order for, like Derek said, because if you see African-American woman, you're like, I wonder where she's from. She may have an accent. I was born in LA, lived in Seattle, moved to Maryland. But there's something about me that allows me to see the world in which the way I see it. But in order for us to get to know that, we have to get to know each other. So that's the conversations we're having in my office, is really having staff to be able to understand each other's story and then reach out to students to really be able to understand where the student is coming from and having an open mind to it.
Sure.
So so we have training that we provide for all the equity liaisons in the district. We do that 4 times a year. For the early dismissal days, so we have one coming Tuesday, the early dismissal day, and I know I kind of get some him and a hum from parents. They're like, oh, another early dismissal day, what am I gonna do with my child? I get it, but it's for a good cause. So teachers are engaging in this work of equitable practices. So that's where our professional development is about for those 4 early dismissal days. It really is about what we say, eliminating achievement gaps. Really talking about, especially for those students who are coming to us struggling for a variety of reasons. So we offer that training. So that's happening next Tuesday.
Sure. Okay. So I got a question.
Yes.
You guys can tag team if you want before I move to the principal. So let me try to frame this the way I'm seeing it in my head. So there's an expectation that as a father, right? I am the head of the household. My wife is the neck. I can't do anything unless the neck moves, right? But as the head of the household, there's an expectation that my son should look up to me, right? He should follow my lead, right? I think it's fair to say that a lot of the activities and the things that we're seeing right now that are giving the good principal a headache, they're not behaviors that are learned in school.
Right.
They're behaviors that are learned at home. So some kind of way there's a disconnect between how you train these teachers and staff on what to say, because if you're basically saying to my son, right, that everything that your dad is saying or your mom is saying or the music's saying or your uncle's saying is wrong, right? How do we cross that bridge?
I'll take it if that's
Take
okay.
it,
I
run
know
with it,
people wanna
because
say
that's
what
what
they-
I want to know how we're.
And again, I'm going to tell a story. So I'm going to speak from the experience of being a principal,
Okay.
right? And being a principal in 2 different, very vastly different settings. And yeah, I did. I had students who would come to school, let's say, this is a safe thing to say, using profanity. Just normal language, like in the hallway, just the whole full-blown, the whole alphabet of bad language. Okay, I'm just saying, right? I can't repeat it now. And instead of me approaching it as what you're doing is wrong, because what I learned was this is language that is common language, like this is how we talk at home. So as soon as I discount that student as to what they're doing wrong, I'm discounting what's being taught at home. That's not my role to do that.
That's right.
My role as the leader of this building is for me not to say what's happening in your home is wrong.
Right.
But it is for me to say, well, while we're here, this language isn't acceptable. It's not appropriate for the learning environment. And I do think that's a good skill. I call it code switching. So how I talk to my friends on the phone, you probably would know Maisha. Like, who is that over there talking, right? Because I have learned that when certain environments I'm in, there's a certain way I have to react, respond, and what's appropriate or not appropriate in that environment. But it's not discounting where I'm coming from in the lessons, because at home, those are your first teachers. Our kids, their parents, or whoever they live with, that's their first teacher. That's where they have the values, etc. So for me to go in and say your values are wrong, my belief system, I think that's inappropriate. But I do think it's appropriate for us to transition our kids to the culture of school.
Sure.
School culture is very different than the mall culture, than me going to King's Dominion or wherever, right? It's very different. So I think that is the challenge. Because many of us come to the table, we want to judge, right? We want to say, that is the worst thing ever. So it's really about pausing our thinking about judging versus just more teaching.
Sure.
So that's my.
And just
I was gonna say, I like to link in, when I
Yeah,
hear,
please.
when I hear it as well, is, again, it's not, hey, what you're doing is wrong, go up to them and talk to them. You're receiving a great education here. Can we think of a different way to express ourselves? I understand you're happy, I understand you're upset, or I understand you're trying to tell them a good job, but can we find a different verb or a different adjective to express that emotion without using language that other people might
Sure.
not?
Let me just, I'm a very transparent guy, so if I say something and I offend someone in this room, it is not my intention, but remember, my objective is sometimes I'm gonna say things that are gonna make people uncomfortable. That's my job. Let me tell you why I asked that question. As a 20-plus year law enforcement person in Prince George's County, having traveled the world now, I spend a greater part of this position in the community, not in the office, but I go to places that a lot of us don't want to be in, and I sit and talk. And let me tell you something that I hear, and I want everybody in this room to hear me say this. And to the black parents, I'm talking specifically to us right now. Let me tell you what the kids are telling me. I'm gonna tell you what the white kids are telling me. That the N-word, I know I'm being filmed, so I'm gonna be very careful. The N-word is a word that in the African American culture has become so fluid. We hear it on the songs, we see it in the videos, and it's common talk, Anthony, between sometimes African Americans just to use the word, right? But then your son says to me in school, well, Mr. Mathews, he uses it all the time. And as soon as I say it, it's a problem, right? Ergo, a potential fight may break out, hostilities burn. So what do we do about it? So I would proffer, and any of you can help me tackle this, the word needs to go away. Calling women the B word and the other words that women are referred to needs to stop. I can tell you that yesterday morning, I'm just going to share a quick story. I was at Southern High School. Was it yesterday morning? What day was I at Southern? What's today? Thursday? I don't know. One of these days I was at Southern. The day after the incident, Tuesday. And I can tell you the funniest thing. I was standing at the door with the chief of police and SROs and other folks, and I was watching the kids come in. It was just masses of them. You guys see it every morning. The kids that knew me from church, from being in the pulpit on Sunday, I know their parents, their grandparents, them, they had headphones on. The ones that had the headphones on, as soon as they saw me, it was like they were snatching them off. And the ones that were moving too slow that I actually caught, take it off your head. Take it off now. I don't know what they were listening to, right? I have no idea. Poor kid could have been listening to gospel music. I don't know. But I know the chances were very slim that that's what he was listening to. So what I'm saying is I think we have to monitor the games, the videos, the music, and the word just needs to be put to death, period. Black and white people, we need to stop using the word. When you watch the tapes and the transpirations of what happens sometimes during a violent confrontation, words are brutal. As a military guy, the tongue is more powerful than any weapon man has ever made. It is destructive. The tongue can literally tear a life apart permanently. Just the words. We've got to be careful of what we say as parents and the communities and everything that we are, because the kids will repeat it at young ages. You tell a story about kids repeating. I remember my son was like 3 years old. We had the video games were getting hot. And at 3, he was just walking around one day using the S word. He just kept saying it. Every time he would do something, he would say it. And we couldn't figure out why. Well, it was because when I was playing this specific military game, every time I would get shot, I would go, and I would say it. He was hearing me, and I didn't realize it. He was just repeating what he heard Dad saying. And when we finally figured out when I was doing it, and he said it, I was like, he's repeating what I say. We've got to be cognizant of what we're saying in front of these young people. Hello, Sky. How are you?
Hi, I'm Sky Bailey. I agree with you 100%. And I wrote a poem about a year and a half ago, and I called it New Definition. And Arundel Patriot recorded me going out to Boys and Girls Club of Annapolis, talking to the children and teaching them that song about never using the N-word again. And it is on the YouTube channel for Arundel Patriot.
Okay. I'm going to get that from her. I'm going to post it on my blog, and I'm going to push it out. Sky is one of my ambassadors. She's doing, you know what date you have, what library you have, where we're doing speed racing?
It is in August with their diversity
Okay,
month.
so she has something called speed racing I'll share with you. So thank you, Sky, I appreciate it. So I just wanted to throw that out as we move forward. And I'm gonna ask you, do we have something, you guys hear it every day, I'm sure teachers hear it. What can we do? Can we set a policy? If you say it, we're gonna stand you in the corner for 2 minutes? I don't know. I know we can't do that. Well, I wish we were all Catholic school again.
I've always preached with anything, whether if it's bias motivated behavior, use of the N-word, or it's bullying. First and foremost, we're always an institution of education, and it's to try to educate our students to why they should not be using that language. Why, even though it may be acceptable between you and your friend to use that word, myself, we lose control of words once they leave our mouth. And how you interpret my words are different than how Mr. Alston may interpret my words, or Corporal Titus may interpret my words. But once I put them out there, I lose all control how anybody listens to my words or responds to it. And if I'm going to use language that may be acceptable between me and my friends, but if I hear it, it's offensive to me, then I'm using offensive language towards other people.
And please don't I'm getting to you. Please don't misunderstand. It's not just the word. It's bullying. I used to say when I had the uniform on in Prince George's County, if I followed a bully home, a bully 9 times out of 10 was going to answer the front door when I got there, right? That's the reality, right? And it's the same thing with inclusion as you're teaching the students. We all have some implicit biases. We all have them. I'll give you a prime example. Watch this. Where's all my Redskin fans? Raise your hand. Put your hands down. Where's all my Dallas fans? Where's all my Ravens fans? We go to war with each other over a team. And we literally, sometimes we use words. We make you feel a certain way. Now, if I wasn't in this chair, right, for real, in my professional way, when the one Dallas guy raised his hand, him and I probably would have went at it for like 3 minutes in good fun. But just imagine a little kid processing that good fun, manly joke about a football team, right? He would try to make me feel so inferior, right? Which would be hard because knowing I'm a Redskin fan. See what I'm saying? See how you can take a joke and you can flip it? But we do that in humor. Well, folks are doing the same thing with serious issues, whether it be what somebody's sexual orientation is, what their race is, what their religion is, and what they believe. It happens every day at home. Then you dress it, you put it on the school bus, and you send it to school. What can drastically change, and what are the expectations of these folks in the school system? How are you, it's almost like we're giving you a bucket or a bag of setting you up to fail if we're not helping you at home to try to mitigate it. So,
I think it is tough, and I can think from my own experiences as an individual that knowing my story. First off, my mother grew up on Mountain Road. Her house doesn't stand anymore, but it used to stand. It was a hairdressing business right up across from where Pastori's Plaza is, and that's the first house that's the only house that she lived in until 1977 when we moved to Rivera Beach. And you know, so I've grown up in this community, and I know a lot of the, you know, I'm aware of a lot of the tensions that are in this community that have manifested itself over time. You know, my family's gone through Chesapeake High School. I went, you know, to the other side of Pasadena at Northeast, but you know, I do, you know, I feel I'm aware of this community and how this community in some cases is unique because it is a community where you have deep-rooted families that have been here for years, and you know, I've left Pasadena. I live in Baltimore County now, but everybody else in my family lives probably within a 3 or 4 mile radius of where we grew up. So you know, but I think it's one for myself through education and through finding out who I am as a man as I matured in age. That helped me to maybe not have the same views that some of my friends had or some of their family members had or others to determine for myself how I'm going to judge people and how I want people, you know, understanding that how I want people to judge me is not based on, you know, because I'm the principal of the school should not give me any clout or any authority. It's how I react with you, how I interact with you as an individual should be the determination of what you feel in relation to me. And I think that's something to try to teach our students to be able to have that empathy. And I have seen with a lot of our youth that they do have that empathy, that they are much more accepting in a lot of ways to students that have gender identity issues or that have chosen to live their lives in a certain way. And you know, I think that is something that is good for our society and good for our youth, and they want to be advocates of change and they want to be able to do that. And it's hard sometimes because it's not always the majority view that they're going with, and they have to understand, have to have confidence in themselves to be able to stand up in that manner and you know, be confident in what they're doing.
Okay, so I want to get to the good corporal. You got something to say?
No, I was just seeing this theme that was unpacking about people being comfortable in who they are. And one of the things that has become very apparent in dealing with this situation is it's not just the kids, but the issue of bullying. You know, up until the issue happened with Chesapeake, I would look back in my reference materials and say, I know of, you know, kids that have wanted to kill themselves because they were bullied at school. But since I've been involved in this, I've been made aware of 2 families that have had to deal with kids in our area that have tried to kill themselves or were successful in killing themselves because of bullying. And one of the things that concerns me about the dialogue that we want to have is that it's a very uncomfortable dialogue, but we need to have it.
We have to.
And the process has to happen. But one of the things that comes out when you're dealing with the victims, when you're dealing with the administration, and unfortunately we don't get to deal with the people who are the perpetrators from our end that much, but it's patience. We have to be patient because when we get information, we make assumptions. And when we make assumptions, we assign labels to people. Even when we're clergy, parents, whoever, working on issues, we're assigning labels through the whole process, the implicit bias that you were talking about. And we make up our mind when we're going to talk to this individual about this problem, they have an agenda. And this person that's sitting at the table has an agenda. And this person sitting at the table has an agenda. And so we're concerned about people's agendas. But keep your focus on the goal. If our goal is to reduce bullying, if our goal is to change the culture regarding hate language in school, if our goal is to make our schools safe, leave the agendas at home. I tell you what, go get I'll give you a for instance, just do it. I'm serious. Get one of those Ziploc bags. My wife has every size that there ever was. So depending on how big your agenda is, pick the right bag, put your agenda in it, seal it, throw it in the refrigerator so it keeps and it'll be there when you get back. But when you go to make a difference, forget your personal agenda and go in with the agenda to do some good for the community as a whole. So when Jay Offer looks at a situation, Jay Offer has his vested interest in what's going on, but I have to be cognizant of the fact that Debbie has an interest in this issue. I have to be concerned that Dawn has an interest in it. And whatever I do can't discount the value of their concerns in the whole issue. It seems that our culture, and I'm going to shut up right after this. It seems that in our culture, we feel that our point of view is so righteous that if a person has an opposing view, that we give them the label of idiot, stupid, and blah, blah, blah. We assign party philosophies and candidate philosophies and what have you. I just wish, if anybody wants to stay with me for a little while, we could have a prayer meeting about that would just go away.
That was that football analogy I gave. It's the same concept.
Yeah, I was helping you.
Yeah. So listen, thank you. So Corporal, I want to get to some of their questions. So here's the question that we get in the office almost daily. And I hear it as I move about. Is Chesapeake High School safe? Right? And this then to Maisha and to the team, are the kids safe in schools? Right? You can only speak to Chesapeake, and that's where I want you to stay. So, and you can help him out. You know, I know they are, but when I get the question, and then I have to actually refer it because I can't answer. I know what the answer is, but my bailiwick is one thing that I got to refer to the school. Safety of the kids at Chesapeake, is that an issue?
Our kids are safe, and we ensure that every day, and the safety for our students is the #1 priority. I'm going to talk a little bit more about safety, but my department went out of their way weeks ago because when some of these issues started coming up, I didn't ask them. They called and asked me. My command staff said, hey, Corporal Titus, what can we do to help Chesapeake High School? And he actually assigned a second SRO to assist me with all the issues we're having and also ensure that safety. But the word safety is unique to each parent that may call your office or mine. Generally, most parents at the school may feel every day my kid is safe, even despite some of the letters going home or what they're seeing on TV. But unfortunately, some of our students are wrapped up in situations, whether they're a victim of a fight, came forward to be a witness in a fight. Then these parents then call me and say, wow, is now my kid safe because now I'm worried about retaliation. And what I have to do is work with these parents and with school administration. We share information with these kids and these parents all the time to give them ideas of how to be safe, give them ideas of what to do if they don't feel safe. I sat down with parents as of yesterday when school was dismissed. I had a parent said, can I come up and talk to you? And we spent 40 minutes talking about her particular child being safe in school. So yes, we always try to give reassurances, strategies, ideas to parents. But yeah, your school is safe. It's very safe.
Okay. So, question. I'm going to dive right in. What does safe mean?
What does safe mean? Well, again, that's all up into interpretation. And every student can come in and say, I don't feel safe today for maybe what I saw on TV last night. I don't feel safe today because somebody Snapchatted something to me that's went viral that had really no substance. It's all rumor or hearsay. So there are a lot of students that come in that don't feel safe every day. We, again, encourage those folks to come see us. We're as open as we can, transparent as we can be. If I am working an open investigation, I certainly can't share too many facts with the general public on that.
Sure.
But school, a lot of times if there's stuff that even happens outside of the community, my department's pretty good about calling me and say, hey, Corporal Titus, this may bleed into the school. You may have kids in this situation, may try to meet up or talk or deal with. And we alert administration and counselors to keep an eye on that. And a lot of times we'll even start pulling kids down. Even though it's a community incident, we try not to pull kids out of class because of being community. But if it's going to be a possible situation in our school, we got to be proactive with that.
Okay.
You know, one of the challenges I had as far as safety or even that perception of feeling safe or not feeling safe is by the time some information would come to me, the situation had been going on for months, but the school team did not know. So by the time, so
you can only deal with what gets reported.
So I have run into those instances, again, being a building administrator, and so we definitely, and I don't know how to bridge this, Derek, that some of the feedback I would get from parents when they would say this has been going on for a period of time, they also felt like that nothing would happen. So sometimes nothing is said because there's the assumption that nothing will happen, nothing will change.
Okay.
So again, even having to either bridge that gap or establish the trust that when you have a caring adult in the building, you can speak it
Okay.
and something will happen.
Okay.
So I do think there's a huge disconnect
Okay.
when it comes to the perception of safety and whether or not someone at the school will respond to that concern.
Okay, all right, I want to keep going. So,
Agree.
Yes.
I have a question. What are the two new positions? How and when will they be filled?
Do you want to talk about the community ambassador
Yeah.
piece? And I can talk about the other position as well. Once you're done.
Certainly. So out of my office, I'm looking at Mr. Austin again because I can't find Mr. Austin. I love it. I can say that well, Mr. Austin. So there are positions called community ambassadors. And currently in Anne Arundel County, there are 2 community ambassadors at North County High School, and there's 1 at Annapolis High School. So the position was created with the idea of having an adult liaison between the school and specific communities. So really embracing a whole family approach.
Okay.
So the conversation we've been having through my office is funding a community ambassador for Chesapeake High School. And again, the role is to be that liaison and actually going into the community. Like part of the responsibility, if a student isn't coming to school, I'm gonna go into the community. I'm gonna inquire, I'm knock on doors, etc.
Okay.
So it really is that, and what's nice about the position, since it's not a teaching load, the individual can do that. They
Okay.
can embrace, again, establish that relationship between the school and what's happening in the community.
Okay.
Have
So-
I adequately described that?
Yes, and I think
Okay.
that, the position will also work with, one of the things that we're in the process of creating right now, in order to provide student voice for our students, is a student
Yeah.
equity team that will be comprised of students, that represent us well in terms of our demographics and the students within our building, to work on how can we continue to because so often you see conversations immediately after, like you talked about before. We're reactive to what happened, and we respond to it, and, while it's hot and it's fresh in everybody's mind, that is the focus of what we're doing. But then as time fades, we become more relaxed in those conversations, and, maybe we're not thinking about it as much. And what I want to do with this is to give the students a voice to be able to continue that conversation, because I think this is something where, as a community, if we move forward, to move forward, we have to change the conversation. We have to continue to have the conversation, not just till the end of this month or the end of the school year, but in the next school year and beyond, so that we can have long-lasting change in this community, that we don't have these same problems continue to bubble up time and time again, and that hopefully we can move more towards that. The other position that we've received funding for is a temporary position right now, but it is a student advocate. Now, it is not a permanent student advocate position that some other schools have, and I'm working with my own staffing for next year to try to carve out the staffing that I would need to do to advocate. But the advocate works with administration. It's somebody else who helps with supervision within the building, but they also build relationships with the kids, and they get to know the kids, and particularly some of our some of our struggling learners, some of our kids that may be dealing with some issues, and for some, they provide a safe voice or a safe person that they can go and talk to. Maybe they don't feel comfortable coming into the office and sitting down and talking with an administrator because they don't want to be seen as, hey, this person's snitching on somebody or they got a problem. But they have a casual conversation with that person, and then can work with us as the administrative team, or work to help get that student other services that student services may be able to provide for them, so that we can help them deal with their issues. And that feeds into that idea of safety. Because if our students feel comfortable talking to us, if they feel comfortable coming into the building and secure in that learning environment, that's a part of safety as well. It's not just controlling who gets into our building, or eliminating fights or eliminating any violence in a school or in a community. It's also that safety in that classroom, that they can try to step outside of wherever they were. And I think of myself as a middle school kid. I was not a great middle school kid, and that's why I never wanted to work in a middle school.
It's middle school.
Yeah. and a father that has twin 11-year-olds that are in middle school, that's been tough for me this year. But You know, the advocate is something I've been trying to get. We have a behavior specialist who works in our decision-making, and who does create those relationships with the kids, but she's kind of stationary in that, you know, when the kid gets sent there, it's usually because they've had an issue in class already. You know, this is somebody that can try to be preemptive, but they also work with us with supervision. And we've tried to identify a couple people, you know, hopefully, you know, for next school year, I can have a permanent position, which does change the pay rate and benefits with that individual. But, you know, at least for the temporary, it gives us somebody to get in that spot that maybe transitions into the other spot.
So the second part of that, when will they be filled? Is that next year?
No, oh, sorry. For me, for the position I'm talking about, committee ambassadors, we're actively interviewing now
Okay.
for positions so we can make it.
Filled before the school year is
Oh,
out?
for sure.
Okay, and then you,
Ours is the position, if it wasn't posted yesterday, it's going to be posted before the end of the week. And I hope as soon as possible to have, you know, have somebody identified for that who's willing to
Okay.
accept it, and then it's just a process of getting them through HR.
okay, all right, sounds good. All right, since you got the seat right now, principal,
Okay.
as a principal, are you allowed to affect a strict no policy tolerance for poor language?
You mean like you're talking like a tolerance policy,
It
or?
says, or strict no tolerance policy for poor language, however you can speak to that.
You know, as principal, I can I certainly can help to set the standard, and that's something that, you know, even before this, you know, throughout this year, we've been having an initiative with our students. You know, we've called it hashtag Don't Press Send. The county has done a pause before you post campaign as well. But it's a mindfulness for our students to, you know, really what we've seen, a lot of issues that lead either to bullying or lead to other issues is a lot of our kids lack a empathy for when they say something. When I text something to that kid, again, it's up to interpretation, but they've lost that reaction. They don't see my face when I read it, you know, and before social media, you know, if I said something to you, I saw how you reacted, and I could see, well, you know, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or maybe you know, by your reaction, I can see you misinterpreted what my meaning was. And, you know, now I can try to talk that, but with social media, we see a lot of things that are just put out there that, again, are open to interpretation, and they may say, well, this was my meaning, this was my intent, but the receiver has a different intent or receives it differently. So
I got you. So the way the question is written, let me pretend I wrote it. So if I'm walking down the hall and I call Jay the N-word,
Right.
what can you do about it? Is there a
if-
policy that
Absolutely.
binds you? What
there is
happens to me when I do
yeah,
that?
With that, it is our, you know, we have a bias motivated behavior or bias policy within our code of conduct.
Okay.
Under that code of conduct, you know, there are specific, you know, categories of the offense, but, you know, I can take action from any level in terms of, you know, conference with the student. You know, obviously, if that's the word, I think I'm going to go a little further than that.
Okay.
But a conference with that student up to suspension to,
Okay.
you know, depending where
So
it is.
you have that authority is the question. You can.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So the second, it's a subsequent question from somebody else, but I'm going to ask it now because I'm trying to feed these questions so I can kind of keep a conversation going. Mr. Gorski, if your hands were untied, what would you do differently to manage the crisis at your school? And I think your hands are tied. I think they're speaking from a standpoint of you can't share what happened to a student. You can't give the name. You can't. But if in a perfect world, if you could do something differently, what would you do?
You know, I mean, in terms of the privacy, I mean, that's a piece that I don't think we can get around in terms of, you know, dealing with the crisis. I think it's, you know, certainly, you know, I feel that in the situations that we've come to know about, that we've been managing our way through, we have been, you know, taking steps to try to ensure that that behavior doesn't occur again. You know, I don't, you know, suspension is what people feel, or, you know, having that student thrown out of the school and never allowed to come back into schools, what a lot of people want in certain situations, but it's not always, you know, it's not what we are able to do, and it's not always the most effective punishment for our kids, but it is to, you know, continue the educational process to have that student be more reflective in what they're doing, or the individual be more reflective in what they're doing, and then ultimately get back to the healing process. Because it's one thing to have committed whatever the act is, but then moving forward to have that restorative practice type of healing between the student and the victim, or the individual and the victim, the aggressor and the victim, is something that we can't always mandate that they participate in that process. And that's something that I think would be beneficial, but it's not always something that people are willing to do.
Okay. So I want to keep these going because I see some hands, but I want to be fair and try to get to what's on the card. And I've been authorized in my earpiece. We're going to go 30 minutes over. So everybody just relax. I'm going to try to get through these so I can get to the... I don't have an earpiece on. I was just So this is for everybody. And Lieutenant, you may want to come in and support the good corporal. And this, I like what this person is saying here. And so they're saying lives are in danger, safety is disturbed, the house is on fire. How do you put out the fire to secure the lives of the students and the educational infrastructure for successful learning? Anybody?
I'll start. You want to stop the fire, you have to build those relationships with these kids. I can tell you right now, there are certain children that get in trouble at school that I have to take enforcement action on. There are certain kids that might have been in that boat more than once. What I try to teach the new officer, who's done a very good job with it, is we don't talk at children, we talk to our students. And you'll find that even the students who've been in trouble with me, I would say a majority of these people know, hey, Corporal Titus had to do what he had to do. He never talked down to me. He did what he had to do. I find that these are the students that actually come and see me more often than mainstream. I probably know less mainstream kids that are doing their job every day. I probably don't know these young folks by names, but the kids who've been in trouble in the past have come and seen me. Some of these kids haven't seen police officers only on the negative end of it, maybe coming in, taking their brother out of their house, or even their own father, and only know police by what we were talking about, what the parents have said around the house. And for them to interact with a police officer for the first time, wow, this wasn't as bad as I thought, or this wasn't what I heard. But I get these students coming to me and says, hey, I'm going to throw you something. You didn't hear this from me, but such and such has got a knife today. Those are the things that are stopping the fires beforehand. Right now, with some of the stuff we got going on right now, I'm trying to hope some of these kids come to me and say, hey, you didn't hear this from me, but you might want to talk to this kid. He might be the one that's graffitiing up your bathroom or whatever. So I think it's about taking ownership of the school. This is my school. These are my students. And try to build those relationships. Sometimes when we get very busy in our day, we find we're not saying hi to the kids. We're not doing this. In fact, Kathy Kubik from the Board of Education and Principal Gorski had a meeting with all administration, which they invited me to come and join earlier this week. And it was a reminder to even administrators, hey, not only be out in those hallways monitoring these students, but go out of your way to start that conversation. Go out of your way to shake that hand. Go out of your way to say, hey, I heard on the announcements you did good on basketball, whatever it may be. And I think that's one method of trying to stop these fires.
I think it's the relationship piece is key. When I first became an assistant principal at Broadneck High School, I had a great mentor in David Smith, and one of the first things he taught me was this notion of the bank of good faith, that I need to put deposits in the bank with my students, with my staff, with parents, to try to have positive interactions, because there's going to come a time, particularly with some of our struggling learners or some kids that have not met with success, that I may have to make a withdrawal, and we may have to deal with behavior or deal with the situation. But if I've taken the time to put money in the bank and have had some positive relationships with them and interactions, and some kids, it might just be that they said hello back to me, because that I look at as progress. And then others, I've had to build the relationship over time and continue to build with them, and then they may get upset with me over something, and I have to work with them again. But the relationships are the key piece to that fire, and also the relationships that we have with the community, because sometimes the fire doesn't always just start at our door. It builds up to our door, and then we have to work together to manage it.
I do want to continue.
No, that's fine. But let me just make a statement. Full transparency. So these things are designed to be an hour. Okay, I'm gonna go over 30 minutes. And just so I'm clear, when you have forums like this and you allow just questions to randomly come, and these questions are long, by now, just so you understand what it's like to moderate something, we may have gotten through one question. Okay, so for an issue of time, and this is gonna be a series of things that we'll build, there'll be other things that we do outside of these coffees to keep this conversation going. But the intent here was for you all to see a conversation of the government people and the people that are supporting engage so you could hear, right? And I'm trying my best to get through these and then open it up for those of you that did not write one. But let me be clear that it is very difficult to have such a serious topic and just allow openness to, we would never get through this. Everybody understand that? So I'm trying to make eye contact with them and get them to speed up so we can try to get to, okay? But this is something that needs to be done. You may not necessarily agree with the format, but we're taking a dent to do something, okay? So if you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't run, crawl. If you can't crawl, just do something, right? So this is an effort to break the ice, break the sound. This is the first time the principal has been publicly heard from, okay? This is the first time the SRO has been heard from. This is the first time most of you even knew Maisha Gillens existed, okay? So the intent was to break the ice, allow this. You're free to call them afterwards. You're free to go visit them. You're free to do whatever you want to do as a community, okay? I just want to be clear with that, all right? So let me just dive in. I'm going to get you, but let me get to this next question because this is a good one. Why do you think the NAACP clergy and caucus of African American leaders believe the responsibility for eliminating racism based on the public school system? Question. Sunday is still the most segregated hour in the U.S. What is the community doing? First part first. Does anybody want to answer the NAACP and caucus?
Oh, I definitely want to talk about
Have
that.
at it, but you got to be quick.
Just what was get to the point of the question?
Why do you think the NAACP/clergy and caucus of African American leaders believe the responsibility for eliminating racism rests on the public school system? That's the first part of it.
That part I could answer real quickly. When you put us together as the collective, that is not the message that we want getting out. As I shared with you before, we know, I can't speak for the Caucus of African American Leaders because unfortunately I missed the meeting last night, but for the clergy and the NAACP, we believe that it is a community-wide issue. I do not believe in a sole source solution for community issues because that means that if it rests completely on the school board to do it, that means that nobody else has any input. And if we don't all have input, then we don't have ownership. And if we don't have ownership, we don't have an incentive to see the success of the plan that's there. Y'all got that? And I did that in like 20 seconds.
So, all right, so the second part of the question still is, Sunday is still the most segregated hour in the U.S. What is the community doing?
Well, I tell you what, Harvest Crusade Ministries, we worship at 10:30 a.m. at 414 Bausch Place. And my congregation consists of African Americans and non-African Americans. It's a decision that the community has to make. Now, I also don't release clergy from a responsibility. The clergy, pastors specifically, are responsible for creating the environment. I can only speak for Harvest, and I refuse to speak against another pastor because we got the same boss. You understand? So, Harvest, we have a thing right now, touching hearts with the love of Christ. And that's what we believe is the most important thing. We need to reflect kingdom principles. We need to reflect love. And people are looking for a safe place to worship. They're looking for a place that understands, that doesn't judge, that isn't going to persecute you. My belief as a pastor is that we're in a period of what we call reconciliation. When Jesus died on the cross, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, y'all cut
Whatever.
edit whatever, but I'm going to just go ahead and take a Kathy Lee Gifford moment. Jesus was about reconciliation. And that's what I think people need to be looking for in places of worship, reconciliation. Bring your sickness in, get healed, and it doesn't matter. There's nowhere in the Bible where it says white sin, black sin, Asian sin, Middle Eastern sin. Sin is sin, healing is healing. And as far as I'm concerned, and I know that there are other churches that are the same, everybody is welcome. So what can the community do? Show up this Sunday at a house of worship and don't worry about who's inside as long as you're inside.
Okay. So let me go back to, because I think this was a topic of the catalyst of the fight as well. So I gave that scenario about using the N-word. So if I was to put it in a different context, right? You and I are walking into school and we're saying it friendly. There's the term, we can say it friendly. What's up, Ma? What do we do with that? What can you do with that?
If I hear you guys having that conversation, is to try to have a conversation with you guys and say, I understand you're having that dialogue and you both are okay with the use of that word. I'm assuming both of you are okay with the use of that word, but others may not be okay with the use of that word. It may be offensive to me. I find it offensive if you're using that word because it's something that, again, it leads, the context in which it's said and how people interpret it or hear it, it leads to a different road and leads to trouble in a lot of cases.
So now I look you dead in the face and say, whatever.
Okay.
I'm not trying to do this to you.
Right.
I'm just
I understand.
being transparent because this is what I'm
Well,
hearing.
whether it's the N-word or that, I hear it as an assistant principal, I heard it a lot. Because sometimes they're not ready to hear what I'm trying to say right then and there. But it has to be a consistent message, and it has to be one that.
So how many times do you and I have that conversation?
Right.
Me as a student, you as a principal, before you hear me say it, and then I'm in the office, somebody's got to come pick me up, and I go home. Because if a young lady or a young male was to walk in, let me just be hypothetical again, truly transparent, he's overweight. Let's say he's obese. And every day he comes to school and I say, hey, whatever. That's bullying, right? So we're going to take a different approach. So if you hear me say that and he's hurt, he's offended, he's crying, am I touching on bullying if it happens repeatedly? Something's going to happen, right? So at what point of me saying, what's up? You didn't process it that way, did you? I see your look on your face. So when I say every day, walk past you, what's up, Ma? How many times before you say, you know what?
Right, I would say, maybe the first time there's a conversation, but if you're going to continue to do it in front of me, then we're going to have.
Well, not directly in front of you, but other teachers. This is a systemic problem.
Right.
We know it's happened. We know they're using it. We know it's.
Right.
How do we? I know years ago, Sharpton did a funeral for it, right? Remember that? They did a coffin and a full, supposedly it was dead. You guys remember that? Am I telling my age? Right? So, we're getting a lot of calls on this one. I'm just trying to.
I think this is a very good question. I think it's something that Mr. Gorski needs to process in his mind how he wants to deal with it. But this is one of the issues, right, wrong, or indifferent of philosophies on the use of that word, and in our community, the dual context of the word. Right. Dual context, as my daughter and I got into it today in a good way, she pointed out there's a lot of dual context in our lives. It's just that this one we get hung up on because if you take it in one context, it's offensive. The other, it's us that's there. And so when we call each other, what's up, Maya? We confuse people that are around us. They don't understand.
I get that, but taken in the wrong way can actually cause fisticuffs. Is the problem? So when our phones ring, right? And this is why I just want to stay here for a second. How do we, as a government or school body, whatever word you want to call, Anthony, maybe I should look at you guys. What can we do to make it almost fall in that category of somebody's being bullied, something happens, so we stop it? Am I making sense?
Can I say something real quick?
Mm.
How much of slavery is really being taught in the schools? Because sometimes when I talk to kids, they don't know anything about slavery. And that's a problem, because that's where the word is coming from. So I feel like once kids are educated and know that that's what that really means. Because when you think about some of the kids right now, they're getting that word from the videos. They don't know
That's what I'm
about the
saying.
history there. So maybe if the history
So why is it
being
not the
taught in
advisory
school.
lessons?
So can we, because this is what I'm hearing, guys, this is why I want to this is why I asked to go over, okay? So can we just talk about this? I mean, we're having a real conversation from a school, you know, what can we push down to say in section whatever, the use of requires
It has to be
one verbal,
legislative. It has to be
one be,
legislative.
that's what it's got to be?
It's got to be legislative.
I think all her.
But I thought you had the discretion though.
The power to.
I thought you had the discretion though.
So then, when he does that, and suspension rates go up for African Americans, and we have another conversation about why the African American rate suspension is going up.
Okay,
And if you're fine with that, that's okay.
Mhm.
But you can't have it both ways.
okay.
You can't have it both ways. So we need to decide how do you want him to respond. And then when he responds, is he going to be on the paper for a different reason?
And that's what I meant by, it puts Principal Gorski in a situation. Now, Principal Alston could approach it in a different way.
Why?
Because
he's African-American?
because how he's coming is perceived in a certain way. But, you know, and it's, I look at who's the messenger. We have a problem with messengers. I don't care who the mailman is that day, but if he brings me a check, I'm all right with it. So if you're gonna break down something that's gonna benefit me and lift me up. And then also Sky's point was very on. It's amazing, and I've had conversations with white people, and I've explained to them where racism came from. I explained to them how the divide between, you know, poor white people and poor black people was necessary for the power base to maintain control, and how the planters had to bring in somebody so their numbers were better when it was stacked up against the other people, and how we keep voices down. And when you share that, people are like, oh, now I get it and I understand. And so then the question now becomes, well, how do we get rid of this? And that's interesting when now all of a sudden we have people who are not African American saying, how do we get rid of this? Because now they understand, and then our children understand.
Okay. All right, thank you. Sir, let me read this question. I'll get to you, I promise. So Tuesday night, the Caucus of African American Leaders and the county chapter of the NAACP passed a resolution to urge the Anne Arundel County School Board proactively address racism within the public school system. Several action items were part of it. We know, I think it was 6 of them, right? Please keep an eye out for it within the organization. So, do you want to? Is there any action within your body? We know the resolution exists. Is it too early to talk about?
Yes,
Too
for sure
early.
it's too early.
Okay.
But I can say, and Pastor Offer can verify or not, but part of the process of working collaboratively through this, I believe we have a meeting scheduled next week,
Okay.
right? To talk about what are some early discussions. But I definitely don't want to give misinformation by speaking
Okay.
to something.
I just
at
had
this
to
moment.
ask
But
because it was
conversations
there.
are
Okay,
occurring.
good. Sir, let me go ahead. You've been raising your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of the talk about what's going on in the community has a lot to do with students in schools, and we don't have any students here. I'm the only one. Why is that?
Well, one, let me answer that. No, I got it. It's a fair question. It's a fair
I'm
question.
a senior, I know.
Oh, hear me out, because we only got 10 minutes, folks. One, they're in school, obviously. But 2, you should know that we are in direct dialogue as of late last night into this morning about bringing something into the schools where we have the powers to be, meet with the students possibly in the morning, kind of like Nancy just left.
Not my child.
Like we do Not My Child, same concept, where we're gonna do something with he and some others during the day, and then bring the parents back for like a 7 o'clock, 7:30, and do the same open forum publicly. We just started discussing this yesterday. I don't know when yet. As quickly as we can organize, we're going to do something. But that's why today. Now, The second part of that, I do these with kids. I've got a Capri Sun something going on with kids. Oh, Nancy is there. Capri Suns with Derek and like the Crofton Library, a couple where I sit down with kids and we have, you should hear what they say. It's mind blowing. So don't be, and when I say be transparent, they're transparent. They give it to me, right? But we take that and we try to go back to the office and package it and put it into what we do next. And then I feed that back and forth with the school system, i.e. the student liaisons. And so there's a lot of work going on that you don't immediately see as we try to be in response mode, right? So that's where we are.
And the kids brought up gun control, you didn't.
Correct. And you were there at the last one.
So I'm trying to be respectful of the forum that you have going on here, but I've had my hand up a couple of times.
And I didn't see you?
You looked right at me, yeah.
Go ahead.
So
Let's
can I
get
go
this
ahead?
here, please.
That'd be great.
I'll hold these.
Okay. So the first thing I'm Jennifer Sowers, and we're part of the Parent Coalition for the area. And the first thing that I wanted to say was when this first started, you guys were talking about the rally and the balloons and all that kind of stuff. I want to say that this has been going on for a long time. And when I say this, I mean bullying as the umbrella, and the racism, the sexual harassment, the assaults has been going on for a long time. So the reason that we put that together is because we felt like we were getting a lot of feedback from teachers and students saying, hey, we love our school, we're tired of hearing all the negative stuff, let's talk about the positive stuff. And so the morale was down, correct? Yeah. So that's why we initiated the community involvement and having the posters and Cougar Nation and try to bring everybody together. So that was multifaceted, okay? Number two, in doing that, the individuals that were involved in some of these racial incidents actually started a conversation with Eva here. And we almost had an opportunity to sit down and talk to them. And their perception, they don't understand how what they were doing was impacting other people. So it's an education piece and communication. So she was that close to sitting down and having a McFlurry with them and talking about, why is this hurtful to other people? Okay, so I think there's an opportunity there to educate those people, right?
You said almost had a conversation. What happened?
We had a parent that was really upset, and when she was talking to them, they had a altercation back and forth. So it didn't happen at that point, but I feel like we can reach out to them again and pursue that in a different forum.
Can I also offer perhaps a mediator, an outside person? It's called community conferencing.
Yes,
And that comes,
for that, yeah, I don't.
absolutely.
okay, so before we leave, we'll make sure that we
Yeah.
connect. Okay.
Okay, number three, the hate speech. So you have, the N word, you have slut, whore, all these different things, fat, fag, all these words, it's all hate speech, okay? So we need to look at, I want this to be as productive as possible, so we all sit here and we talk about, what would be great, but we have to actually take some action, right? So we're meeting with Kipke and Fink to talk about legislation that would change what Gorski's allowed to do or what Mr. Olson's allowed to do and give them guidelines that says, the question we had about students being safe, it's different keeping them alive versus protecting them from mental abuse, right? So my daughter has been, I can't even tell you how demoralized she has been over the past 4 years from this hate speech, okay? And that involves sexual harassment, stalking, all of those things. So it's not them putting their hands on somebody, it's them abusing them mentally, right? So there has to be legislation that says that's not acceptable, and as soon as that happens, this is what Mr. Gorski's gonna do, right? And then the other thing I wanted to say is that when Jay's talking about the suicide attempts and the suicides that have happened, there's also, we get messages almost daily about kids that are attempting suicide. What do I do for my kid? Who do I contact? So we need mental health resources. We need Jen Corbin to come in and be proactive. She's trying to do that. She needs to have more of an opportunity to do that in the high schools to address these issues. We've also talked to counselors that spend a good majority of their day addressing cutting, you know, and that all stems from this hate speech. You know, these girls and stuff are called all these names and they feel like they have no recourse. So they take it out on themselves. So these counselors are calling the parents and saying, did you know that your daughter is wearing long sleeve shirts when it's 85 degrees outside because she's hurting herself? So we need a lot of mental health checks going on. I think we're moving that way, but my point is that we need to have something be proactive and come out of sessions like this with a plan. And I think that getting our politicians involved is a key to that.
I think you need
Okay.
more adults, just, I'm Deidre Sack, I have a son that's a senior, and I have a daughter that's a freshman. And they both tell me that to get through a hall, they're constantly slammed into, just to see if somebody can knock off their backpack. It's an everyday occurrence.
This is at
It's-
Chesapeake?
Yes. So, and then they say, well, you know, I've asked them, well, and it goes along with language as well, with people saying things to one another. My daughter tells me that the teachers are there, but they don't do anything. And even if they would, there's one teacher to how many children are walking through this hall at a time, you know, in a 4-minute session to get from one class to another. It's, I think we need more, possibly more adults just in the hallways alone to be able to see and hear this going on, to really catch things. And it needs to be every day, and it needs to be,
Principals need more staffing, more funding for staff.
So-
Yeah.
He needs help.
And we know that.
it needs to be done.
But I will say-
Realize that
Punishments,
Okay, hold on a second, guys.
having the
Hold on
ability
a
to take
second.
action, having the ability to punish a student, to suspend a student, to put a student up for expulsion and have them removed from our building, that's one step in the process. But even if I get to that spot, even if I expel your son because of his actions, if you as a parent, or me as a parent, if my son or my daughter does something in school that causes them to have consequences for their behavior, if I don't follow it up and reiterate to them, and I'm not saying people don't do this, but if I don't follow it up and really, you know, continue the education process, not just deal with the consequences and the punishment, because punishment is, you know, we can learn to take all the punishment we can get,
Sure.
but to understand that behavior is wrong and to learn from it and to come out of it in a way that we are a better person or a better society. If we're talking about everybody, that's the most important piece too. Is that if you don't hold it, if I don't, you know, reissue that message at home and continue to have that message with my children, then whatever we're doing in the school is only going to be a part of what they're hearing. You know, and I think that's something we've been talking about all along.
Right, thanks. So let me just talk backwards for a second, if there's a such thing. Thank you, okay? I apologize, I didn't see your hand, but you should know that when I was excited to know you guys were coming, because I wanted to hear, this is about positivity. I want to focus on,
Maybe you could have known that.
I want to focus, well, it wasn't something I was ready to
Shoot me
reveal.
a text next time.
Let me just stay focused for a second. What you guys are doing is a perfect example of what we want to hear. Now, because I didn't know about it until he went live on FaceTime, just whatever day it was, and I reached out to you, I need to be able to highlight that so I can push it out so everybody knows that you're doing that type, because there's a lot of that going on in the community.
Right.
So as I do these monthly around the community, right, and you've got human relations, he's got a separate network where we have to let folks know that. So today, when I get your email, the next time you do something, just imagine how many more people I can let know what you're doing. But I have to know that, right? Nancy has to know that for consistent services. Sarah in the back, raise your hand, Sarah. She has to know that so we can try to help you promote that good stuff so more people hear about it. That's the intent of
We've been
reaching
in
this.
communication with them.
I got you.
Okay.
So, but everybody needs to know, it's always difficult with things like this because everybody would like to walk out of here with the magic solution. I know I would. I mean, I really wish we could just meet for an hour and say, we are good to go and all fixed. We know that's not gonna happen. But sometimes there's an expectation that whenever we gather, that's going to happen. And it's not, but what needs to happen is that we've sparked something in you that maybe wasn't sparked the way that it should have, for you to go out and do something. How many of you actually know aacounty.org/united and what's on there? Okay? Activities are listed across the county where these things are happening weekly and monthly. All types of activities from different departments within the county, right? I need you to really start logging on and paying attention as you plug us in to what you're doing, right? So that's the purpose of the Anne Arundel United and these coffees. The intent is ultimately to bring Dr. Olato and Steve and have them join in some of these conversations. But everybody's got senior level stuff that they have to manage at a daily basis too, and leave it to the worker bees like us to go out and gather the intel to make it happen. So having said that, I just want to listen to the principal. My hat's off to you. I know your hands are full. Let's give you a round of applause. I wish we could stay and do this for the entire rest of the day, but everybody's got jobs we got to focus on. Anthony, and to your team, thank you for being here. Y'all not gonna clap for Anthony? Police Department, on behalf of the good chief. Aisha, my partner in equity and assurance. And then good Jay, Reverend Offer, who not only spoke, I like the way he so eloquently put it. He didn't invite you to his church because he knew I would have attacked him afterwards. He said go to any church. And we all know, no matter what age you are, most of us came up from a foundation of a lot of what we're dealing with. The foundation of good usually came from you being forced or pulled into church when you were a kid. We've kind of lost that. In my professional opinion, I don't usually give this. It hurt us when we took it out of school years ago. I mean, I really feel like at some point, it didn't happen on our watch. I got it, but thank you for being here. Y'all not gonna clap for Jay?
Yes.
But first and foremost, to the folks that are here that took time out of your day,
Yes.
whether you're with an agency, whether you're a parent, whether you're just in the trenches willing to get dirty and roll your sleeves up. Call me. I'm going to give you my card, my info, aacounty.org, but give yourselves a round of applause. Is Rebecca here? She knows calendars. Where is she? Oh, you're hiding from me. Folks, let me tell you, this is my partner in crime from the library. She's given us access to all the libraries. Rebecca, please, thank you. Everybody give her a round of applause. And they've become an incredible partner. You have one of your what's happenings? Okay.
Always.
Everybody grab a what's happening. Her and I really spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we have things going on nonstop for you to involve yourselves in and share what you're doing, right? Because it's important that we all learn what everybody's doing. I don't spend a lot of time up on this side of the county, but that's Sarah in the back. Sarah is connected. Raise your hand, don't hide.
I live here too, and I raise my children in these schools. So,
Right.
and
So-
Nancy Schramm lives like a mile down the road. All the kids went to Chesapeake, so put it all over so the young parents don't know. But very connected. This is my
So, folks, thank you again. I appreciate it. That's going to conclude this Ambassador Coffee here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.